So let's start with a big question. What if the true measure of success for your work, and this could be a nonprofit, a movement, even just a team you lead, isn't its size right now?
Not its visibility or the numbers you're hitting today.
Right. What if it's simply what's left, what continues when you're no longer there?
That is the exact question we're digging into today. For this deep dive, we've gone through a whole set of sources, all focused on this one concept they call reproducibility.
Reproducibility. And they have this acronym for it, DQM.
Yeah, DQM, which stands for Disciple Quality Multiplication, is basically a framework for building things that are designed from the very beginning to outlive the person who started them.
And our mission for you here is pretty direct. We want to help you understand the difference between, impressive short-term activity, the kind of thing that looks great on a report.
But it's actually quite fragile.
Exactly. The difference between that and the kind of long-term continuity that really lasts.
Because there's this really uncomfortable pattern that shows up in all the reports. Most projects don't fail with some big explosion.
No, they just fade away.
Fade away quietly, usually a few months after the founder or the main funding source steps away. And the line that just kept coming up was, everything works until the missionary leaves.
Wow. That one phrase, that should make anyone stop and rethink how they're measuring things.
It has to.
Because if the whole engine stalls the moment you stop pushing, then what you thought was a successful vehicle was really, a system built on dependency.
Not discipleship, not real ownership.
We get so caught up in measuring the expansion and the output that we can see, and frankly, that we can control.
And that's the trap, isn't it? The sources say if the system is built around your charisma or your specific expertise or your connections to funding, then the mission itself hasn't truly succeeded. The real test becomes,
does this thing reproduce itself without me?
Yes. And they're really forceful about this. They say reproducibility isn't just about business efficiency. That's not the word they use. They call it obedience.
Okay, that's a strong word. Obedience. So they're grounding this in something deeper than just good management theory. What is the mandate they're pointing to?
It starts with this idea of fruit that remains. It's a foundational concept. The goal isn't just to produce fruit, even if it's really impressive fruit. The goal is fruit that carries its own seed, fruit that can reproduce life all by itself long after you're gone. It has to endure transition.
So if my brilliant idea or my innovative program dies the second I walk away, then by this metric, it was an incomplete success.
It was sterile.
It might have looked good, it might have even helped people for a little while, but it needed constant external energy to survive.
Exactly. And the organizational blueprint they point to has this immediate transfer built right in. You see in that famous line from 2 Timothy 2.2, Paul lays out a whole succession plan.
I remember this one, like a chain.
It's a 4-generation chain. You have Paul, who gives it to Timothy.
Right.
Timothy is then told to entrust it to faithful people, and those people will then be able to teach others also.
So Paul to Timothy, Timothy to these faithful people, and then those people to others. That's a 4-stage decentralization model in a single sentence.
And it's not casual advice. The sources are clear. This is intentional architectural design.
It's the blueprint.
It's the blueprint. The core idea is that knowledge and authority, they can't be hoarded by the leader.
Yeah.
They have to be given away. They have to be diffused through the whole system.
Which builds in resilience. If Timothy gets taken out of the picture for some reason.
The next 2 generations are already up and running. They're trained, they're operational.
Okay, but this is where it gets really tough psychologically, right? The sources talk about this paradox of indispensability. We are trained and rewarded for being indispensable. You want to be the person who holds the keys, the one the client insists on talking to.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's job security.
But in this model, the ultimate measure of your success is, it's how unnecessary you become over time.
They call that apostolic maturity.
Yeah.
And it's a huge internal shift. It's moving from control to trust, from ownership to stewardship. For any leader, that's a massive ego check.
Yeah, I can just hear someone listening right now thinking, wait a minute, if I make myself unnecessary, I'm out of a job, I'll lose my funding, my whole identity. How did the sources handle that fear?
It's a real tension. But they argue you're only sacrificing control, not quality, as long as you build with simplicity in mind, which we can talk about in a minute.
Okay.
If you refuse to make that shift, you get stuck with what they call the hidden cost of a non-reproducible mission, which is just perpetual dependency.
So what does that dependency look like in the real world? Can you give us an example?
Sure, dependency means the entire mission runs on imported energy. There was this one case study of a nonprofit that built a network of clinics. Looked amazing on paper.
Right. Big success story.
But the vision, the money, the high-level leadership, it was all anchored externally back in their U.S. headquarters. So the moment a big grant got paused,
Let me guess. The whole thing stalled.
the clinics couldn't even afford the software licenses or the fuel for the generators because those were all foreign-made and required foreign currency.
So the local leaders were basically just managers, not owners. They were executing an external plan.
Precisely. The system was designed to stall without that external push. And that's the tragedy. It was never actually built to stand on its own feet. It was all scaffolding, no seed.
Okay, so if the big mandate is reproduce, don't just control, we need to get practical. Let's dig into the how. The sources seem to organize this around 3 big pillars.
They do. These are the 3 core frameworks for actually building this way. And the first one is all about authority transfer and Indigenous leadership.
And here the sources are really sharp. They point to Jesus' model. He didn't measure his success by how many people needed him every day.
No, quite the opposite.
He measured it by how many he could carry on without his physical presence. I mean, his last command wasn't stay here with me. It was go and send them. That is a radical level of trust.
It's more than trust. One source called it a radical leadership risk. I mean, think about who he handed this mission to.
Not exactly a polished executive team.
Not at all. You have Peter, who was brilliant but impulsive. Thomas, who doubted everything. He gave them massive authority before they were perfect.
Whereas we, as modern leaders, we want to wait. We want to see all the certifications, the perfect track record, before we hand over the keys to anything important.
And that waiting, that desire for perfection, it just kills multiplication. Reproducibility means you have to have the courage to hand over responsibility when the outcome isn't guaranteed.
When you know they'll probably make some mistakes.
Exactly. If your system can't survive the learning curve of new, local leaders, it was too fragile to begin with. You have to be willing to accept some small, short-term mistakes for the sake of long-term continuity.
And this isn't just, a nice cultural idea like, oh, we should let the local team have a say. The sources frame this as a core operational mandate.
Absolutely. They point to Acts 14 and Titus 1, where local leaders, elders were appointed quickly. The principle is clear. You give authority away, you don't clutch it.
So that local ownership gives the mission roots that no amount of foreign money or expertise can ever replicate.
That's right. And that leads directly into the second pillar. If your leadership structure is about trust, then your operational structure has to be about scalable simplicity.
This is such a powerful idea. The contrast they draw is between ministry that impresses and discipleship that multiplies.
A very sharp contrast.
Yeah.
The impressive stuff often involves high-tech programs, huge buildings, complex systems, but complexity is almost always the enemy of multiplication.
Why is that? Why is complexity so dangerous?
Well, because it instantly creates dependency on an expert, on a specialist.
The person with the password.
The person with the password, the certified technician, the grant writer who knows the jargon. If your method requires proprietary software or a 100-page manual in another language, you've just severely limited who can ever replicate it.
You're building that beautiful scaffolding again, but you need a team of specialized engineers just to maintain it.
You are. Contrast that with Jesus' approach. His methods were all about scalable simplicity. He used stories from everyday life parables. He asked questions. He shared meals.
Things anyone could do.
Things anyone could do. The sources call it practice before perfection. The core truths were simple enough that fishermen and farmers could not only understand them, but could immediately turn around and teach them to someone else.
So a reproducible system has to be simple enough to remember, biblical enough to trust, and flexible enough to adapt to a new context.
Yes. Without needing an expert to fly in and authorize the change, the idea is that the movement should spread like a seed, which multiplies on its own, not like scaffolding, which always needs external maintenance.
Simplicity isn't shallowness.
Not at all. It's depth packaged for multiplication.
Okay, that brings us to the third pillar, and this is often where the rubber really meets the road. Ethical financial structures. Money as the ultimate test.
It really is. It can be subtle, but so destructive. Financial dependency, the sources argue, just quietly erodes local ownership and, frankly, local dignity.
Oh, so?
When all the money for salaries and operations flows in from an external source, it automatically centralizes the real authority with the donor, not the local team.
The local team ends up feeling like they work for the foreign organization, not for their own community's mission.
They're following the money, not the vision. It's an insidious effect. That external money, even when it's given with the absolute best intentions, it starts to dictate everything.
It demands certain programs or infrastructure that's way too expensive for the local context to ever maintain.
Right. We read these heartbreaking stories of churches that thrived for years but that dissolved almost overnight after the foreign funding stopped, because the entire model was built to satisfy an external budget, not the local reality.
So the goal has to be building something that could survive the complete loss of outside funding. How do you actually design for that?
The sources give 3 clear principles. First, you have to prioritize and encourage local generosity right from day one, no matter how small it is.
So instead of aiming for a budget that's 100% funded from the outside, you aim for a budget that's 100% owned by the inside, even if it's much smaller.
That's the mindset shift. Second, you use modest infrastructure. You focus on people and relationships, not on expensive buildings or vehicles that will always need foreign money to fix or replace. And third, you have to set crystal clear financial boundaries from the start so that external money never gets to dictate the local vision. The vision has to lead the money, not the other way around.
So when you put all 3 of those together, the authority transfer, the simplicity, and the financial design, it's all geared toward making the local team the center of gravity.
Instead of the missionary or the founder, it's about engineering sustainability from day one. If you have to keep flying back to fix things, it was never built to last.
Which brings us to that final litmus test, doesn't it? The discussion of what legacy really means. The sources use this powerful image of the airport as a sacred threshold, that moment when you leave.
Yeah. The question is, what happens after the departure gate closes?
And the paradox is that your absence has to become their empowerment.
It has to. The ultimate model for this, of course, is that Jesus' departure was actually to your advantage because it released the Spirit. It multiplied the mission far beyond what one person in one physical location could ever do.
So the leader has to shift from being the cornerstone, the piece the whole structure rests on,
to being the catalyst, the thing that starts the reaction but isn't needed for it to continue.
That takes so much courage. It means your core commitment isn't building what you're best at, but building what you're willing to release.
Teaching what others can teach, leading in a way that makes yourself replaceable. One source called it the courage to build what you will not control.
So the metrics just completely shift. And this is the big takeaway for you listening. You have to stop focusing on the visibility and the output that you control.
And start focusing on continuity, on resilience, on what multiplies. A true legacy isn't the empire you build while you're there. It's what keeps growing years after you're gone.
So we've covered a lot. The mandate for fruit that remains, releasing authority to imperfect people, the power of simplicity, the test of finances. At the end of the day, the difference between a fragile project and a resilient movement really seems to boil down to a few key contrasts.
It's control versus trust.
Yeah.
Complexity versus simplicity. And maybe most of all, accumulation versus multiplication.
And if you're leading anything, a team of 2 or an organization of thousands, the ultimate test of that leadership isn't how indispensable you are.
It's how fully the work thrives without you.
And so that leaves us with one final and maybe a bit of a provocative thought for you to take with you. If you had to step away from your work tomorrow completely, what parts of it would still be alive and well next year?
And what parts would just quietly disappear?
The answer to that question reveals not just the limits of your current approach, but the incredible potential of a mission that's finally, truly built to outlive you.